Well, go for it, Ron.
Aren't I recording?
Yeah, you are.
Daniel,
Yes,
I'm
you're
recording.
recording. I said, go for it. Start talking. I thought you were doing a countdown that you're going to start talking.
I wanted to talk to you about clarity. And we had discussed before we recorded this that we may not be as clear as what we would like to think. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having the challenges we're having today to deal with what's going on in our lives.
Yeah. And you also made a statement that clarity gives you power, right?
I took a course called Money and You in 1980 something. And Robert Kiyosaki taught us the phrase that I think came from Buckminster Fuller, but I'm not sure, that clarity leads to power.
Yeah.
And you made me aware today that I've never really practiced that.
Well, I think we tend to forget that clarity has that power until we experience it. And even when we experience it, we don't necessarily remember it.
No.
And this is what creates the, the challenge or, the challenge with that. So I just looked up the definition of clarity, and the noun says the quality of being coherent and intelligible.
And do you have a root of the word in there?
Now you're asking for the root. The quality of transparent purity. The other one, they have the quality and the transparency of purity, but I'm looking at.
Like, is it from French? Is it from German? It's from
Here,
Latin?
I'm just. The first known use of clarity was in 1616. History of clarity, Middle English clarite, from Latin claritat, and from clarus, and it says to clarify. So that's not.
That doesn't help us.
No, that doesn't help. Yeah, so I think from the perspective of, when we were talking about clarity, it's not necessarily going to the definition of the word, but I think having clarity does give you power, because now it gives you more of a direction and knowing what you need to do.
So how would I know if I had clarity?
Well, clarity for me, and in the business that I'm doing, often we tell people, hey, do you have a clarity? Who do you want to work with? So you need to define who that actually is, and you have to have the understanding who that person is that you want to talk to. So how would you know you have a clarity? It all depends what clarity you're seeking, right? There has to be a context around that. I mean, just saying, oh, I've got clarity. Well, clarity on what? Or of what?
Well, you had mentioned that we may not have as much clarity as our minds would like us to believe.
Well, I think the conversation we're having, you mentioned that you've had a clarity now on something, as far as conversation or knowing exactly what your brother was thinking when you asked him a question. And when we were speaking on that, you now had clarity because you knew exactly what he was thinking, instead of allowing your mind, hijacking you and putting thoughts that were completely false. Right? That was the situation. So this is where, when you had the clarity and you knew exactly how your brother felt about something, your mind still was trying to come up with a whole bunch of stories, but now you actually had the clarity, so you could actually overpower your mind, and you had a choice. You can either say, oh, okay, well, that's great. Now I have clarity, really what my brother is thinking, as opposed to being in the dark and allowing your own mind trying to come up with a whole bunch of stories.
And I remember that after I asked him the question and he gave me the answer, all of a sudden I had no chatter.
Yeah, you had clarity.
So I had clarity, not realizing that I had clarity. But I'm thinking right now that because of some of the challenges that I'm having in my life today, I am starting to become conscious of I don't have as much clarity as my mind would like me to think.
Yeah. And
And
again, the question is, how much time have you actually spent gaining that clarity or having that clarity, or do you just sit there and allow your mind to hijack you?
I allow my mind to mess with me.
Yeah.
And I need another body or person to keep me a little more conscious of what I've been avoiding.
And it's interesting you use the word avoiding. So you consciously already know that you should have or gain more clarity, yet we're making a choice not to, and then we become frustrated by the fact that we're not spending enough time on doing it because
And
it's uncomfortable. So let me ask you
yes,
this.
it's uncomfortable, and my mind doesn't like being uncomfortable.
Yeah. So even you go and asking your brother the question, did it come naturally to you?
No, it came because you gave me the suggestion, and I went with it.
Yeah. But did it come naturally, even you going and doing it, or did you almost have to remind yourself? And I'm not going to say you had to force yourself, but you had to actually move in that direction in order to get there. It wasn't like it came naturally.
It almost came naturally with your invitation.
And isn't that fascinating how you probably thought about it, but your mind overrode it. But when sometimes we hear a suggestion from somebody else, and this is what coaching is all about, when a coach tell us to do something, even if we already know it, we'll go and do it because somebody else asked for it or ask us to do it. But when we have the thought ourselves, we allow our mind to override that thought.
It's a perfect example where my mind has been conditioned to operate a certain way. And when I think of the idea, I won't do it because I don't trust that I can come up with the right question on my own.
Yeah. That's called mind hijacking. Was that what you would agree with?
Well, I call it mental masturbation. My mind gets off on things that it happened, and it's unaware of how it really is stopping me from being the magnificent person that everybody else thinks I am.
Yeah.
And when it comes up to having my own decisions, I remember back in 2003 when I went back to my birth name. And it was such a natural thing for me to sit there and ask my father in the universe, Dad, is it okay for me to become a Tabachnik again from Talbot? And I got such a warm feeling that it was a natural thing to do. And it was the first time in my life, Daniel, that I made a major choice on my own. Yeah. And when I went to my older brother that I was working with, he was fine with that. But when I went to my oldest brother and my mother, they were livid that I made that decision without consulting them, which made me aware that it's not okay for me to really think for myself. Yeah. And that's why my mind works against me and not supporting me. And that's why I believe that when I get angry, I'm not getting angry. My mind is getting angry at me not doing what my mind wants.
Yeah, I call that arguing with reality.
Yes. And my mind doesn't like reality.
Yeah. Well, it's painful for it because that's the truth. And sometimes it's easier or better for our minds to live in stories because it can control stories. It cannot control truth or reality.
No, it can't. And
it tries to.
It tries.
Yeah.
And it keeps on trying until someone comes along and says to me, Ron, don't do a video because people who see you for the first time are going to get upset because you're so serious. And other people that know me don't say that at all.
Because they know you now.
They know me now. So there's something about knowing me that is contrary to meeting me for the first time, that people get angry and they walk away the first time because I'm so, as you say, passionate. I'm so intense, and I just want to help them and become friendly, and it's not getting interpreted like that.
Well, a lot of people, unfortunately, are asleep.
We all are still asleep.
Yeah, well, some people are a little bit more asleep. Let's just put it that way than others.
Yeah. Some people are dozing in this life. And I've said to you before that if I was really awake and conscious, I wouldn't be having some of these challenges that I'm experiencing if I really were awake.
Yeah, well, now you're back, we're all kind of at some point plugged into the matrix, right? And we all believe certain things in a certain way. But slowly we do get awakened, or we have the opportunity to awake, but some people just never do.
So that's why, let's get back to clarity.
Yeah.
If I realized, or was willing to realize, that I'm not clear about my challenges, as an example, I'm not clear about dealing with not having money.
Yeah.
So if I were to ask you as a coach, if I said, Daniel, I feel that I am not clear about my economic situation, what would you say?
Well, I think what it comes down to is, when it comes especially around money and not having clarity around money, is first go back to what is the reality? How much money is in there? What are, most people have no idea about their finances because they never sat down and kind of draw a line in the sand and said, hey, this is the truth. This is the reality. What is happening right now? A lot of people are just hoping that somehow their current situation is going to change, but they don't really sit down. And not only they don't do the planning, they kind of do the hopeful wishing and hoping that they're going to make money at some point, but they don't even know where they are at right now. And I think, if you use the example of an airplane, right? If the pilot didn't know what airport he was starting from, and he had no idea where he was going, he just said, well, I'm somewhere and I want to fly, let's say even down to Florida. Well, if he didn't know where he was starting from, he would have really no idea how to get there, where they need to go, right? So when you talk about finances, often first place where you got to start, and not just about finances on everything, you've got to figure out where you are at right now. And most people don't want to spend that time because it can get depressing. But if you don't have clarity where you're starting from, you will never be able to get there where you want to go. And I think this is why a lot of people miss that. They do all of the planning, and they do even vision boards, and they do a lot of these things hoping that something's going to change. But often they find out that 6 months, a year down the road, they're still kind of in that same place. And for me, I think it is because if you don't know where you start from, you're not going to be able to get to where you're going.
Well, two things that came up from what you just said. One is, I would feel very uncomfortable on this Zoom meeting to tell you my financial situation and share this with whoever's going to watch it, is the first thing I noticed. So yeah. I would say to you that I know exactly what's in my bank to the penny. I know exactly what my bills are coming up on Monday. And that's what my financial situation is at the moment. I know what I'm going to be giving to my brother to help him in the house. So that's at the moment what I say is my reality.
So good. So if you already know where you're at, right, the next thing would be, okay, well, what is it that you want? And then it's a matter of working backwards and saying, okay, well, what are the steps that you need to make? Right?
So I have a problem and I'm a visionary. I've been doing this for 20 years up until a couple of years ago. doing it for myself and doing it for companies and individuals. And I sent you my dream, I guess, about a month ago.
Yeah.
And I've decided two things. One, I think right now, especially today, it could be valuable for people to have something to look forward to. But the thing that I've noticed is I'm having my own challenge of really figuring out what I would like to achieve. So I gave it a guess, what I sent you of my dream. And I realized that that may change tomorrow, but at least I have something to look forward to, where before then I was living day by day.
Yeah.
So I think having a vision has value, but I don't know what's stopping me at the moment from achieving my dream. So what I want to share with you, it's one thing to have a reality today. It's one thing to have a dream, but where most people miss is that they don't know what's stopping them from achieving that dream because they don't have clarity.
Yeah. Well, what you just mentioned there, really what anybody needs to figure out is, once you know where you are at, you know where you're going, you need to figure out what's that next small little tiny, and maybe it's a very, very small step that's going to take you to the next point, So it's almost like stacking dominoes, right? Reason people don't move forward because they don't have clarity on what is that next step, right? Like, what's that thing that if you wake up tomorrow morning, what's that next thing you need to do? And then knowing what's the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You don't need to know all of the steps right now, but you need to get a clarity. Like, for an example, listen, if you want to go make money, right? The way that money is made, and doesn't matter what business you're in, you need two components. You need somebody that has a problem, that wants to solve that problem and is willing to pay for a solution for that problem. And on the other side of the equation, you need to have the solution for that problem. The way that anybody makes money, and it doesn't matter what business you're in, like using a restaurant for an example, well, they need people that are hungry and that are willing to go to a restaurant and pay money to eat food. And the restaurant has the type of food that these people want, right? The way that restaurant makes money is they bring the food to the people, right? If you're a coach or if you're a financial advisor, whatever, you need those two components. You need to have a solution, and you need the people that actually want it and are willing to pay for it. So in order to make money and change your financial situation, you need those two components. You need to find the people, right, that are the right fit, that are willing, that recognize they have a problem, and you need to have the solution for them, and they're willing to pay for it.
So how do I find a person or an organization that has the problem that I can solve?
Well, how you can find, there's many different ways of finding them. Once you define who they are, you just go to them, right? And you can find them. I mean, when it comes down to finding clients, at a very simple way, there's only two ways how to find them. There is either you pay somebody to go and find them for you, like paid method, where it could be advertising or something like that. And then you have a free method, and that could be on like LinkedIn. It could be organic, where you're doing a post, where you're writing an article, where you're doing an interview, right? And you start to attract people into your network, and then you need to start to nurture them so that they have an understanding how you can actually help them, right? So the clarity comes from, again, if we're just using the word of clarity, the clarity comes from, knowing where you are, having the clarity where you want to go. Clarity is knowing where the next, what is that next step? And maybe the first next step is just what we're talking about right now, is start to identify who are those potential people that you can go out there and start having conversations with, right? Who is that person that you can call up or connect with them and start to build a relationship and show them how you can actually help them. Because most people, doesn't matter what product you sell, a bigger majority of people have no idea how they can even use your products or service. So you need to make them aware, right? Most people are not aware that they actually even have a problem, right? I mean, I don't know how many times have you gone and bought something, but after you buy it, you're sitting over there going like, well, I went to the store, I didn't even think that I needed this, yet I went and bought it. Now, I'm not talking just buying stuff for the sake of buying stuff, but I know that whenever I bought something, I wasn't thinking that I needed, but they gave me a value proposition and an offer where it makes sense, and I chose to go and buy it because it was actually satisfying something that I need. But if I go back 5 minutes before that conversation where it told me what it was all about, I didn't even think I had a need. Right? Again, I'm not talking about buying things that we don't need, but I'm talking about true solutions to challenges that we have. Right? So again, it all comes down to the clarity, and the challenge is that if you don't know who you're working with and you don't know how you help them and how you solve their problem, and you don't know what problems they're facing, it's going to be very difficult for you to go out there and make money and sell something to someone, because you're ultimately just hoping that you will mention something that might resonate with someone. So maybe the first step is for you to learn as much about your clients, what they need, what their problems are as you can, so that when you speak with them, you can start to expose the problems that they have.
And with that awareness, I sometimes feel that the only reason why I'm contacting you is because I want your money.
And what is wrong with that? And no, I don't want to step outside with you, Ron.
Because I enjoy so much talking with you that when it comes to talking about business, if you are not interested in what I have to offer, I find it challenging.
Yeah. And again, you know what? When you're talking about that and when you were sharing this, I heard one speaker say this: when you're in sales, when you have your own business, when you need to talk to people, you have to talk to strangers. And I don't know if you remember what your mother told you when you were younger, but what did she tell you? Don't talk to strangers.
And I remember no one ever said to me, okay, now it's okay to talk to strangers. Yeah. And I always thought when I started the business world, I still had that thing in my mother's mind, in my voice, saying to me, well, it's not okay to call a stranger.
Yeah. Stranger means danger.
Stranger means danger. And even to this day, I remind myself, Ron, this was happened when you were 5 years old. Stop it.
Yeah. And again, this is, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying that at the moment, even so sometimes you know that I love talking to strangers, when it comes to doing business with a stranger, I hear that voice in my head. Don't talk to strangers.
And I think that's a combination too, where now you're thinking like, not only am I talking to a stranger, but I'm trying to sell them something, and maybe they're going to judge me because I'm trying to sell them something, as opposed to, no, I have a true solution for someone. And again, this is where the clarity comes. If you don't have clarity on who you're working with and how you can help them, we sometimes get wrapped up in all of these stories. Yeah, stranger danger, I'm just trying to sell something to someone. I don't want to be sold. Sales is a negative word. I feel like it's used salesman. And I think all of these stories hijack our mind, and then we kind of freeze and we don't do anything. And one of my coaches said this, and I like how he says that. He said, there is what's called lag indicators and lead indicators. And he separated it. In the world of sales, making a sale is a lag indicator. Lag indicators are things we don't have control over. If somebody's going to become a client or not, you can't really control it, right? What you can do is, you can present to them, but if they're going to buy, they're not necessarily going to buy from you because you just tell them about it. The control of buying something is on the other side, right? But lead indicators are the things you do have control over. And lead indicator would be, well, how many leads do you have? How many prospects? How many conversations are you having? That's something you do have control over. And that's what you need to focus on. As opposed to on making the sale, focus on having more conversations, because we know that does come down to numbers, and the more people you talk to, the more opportunities you create, the more you're going to be able to, the more sales you're going to make. But if you're just focusing on the sales is a result of something. It's not the actual action that you need to start doing, right? Like people say, oh, I need to make more money, I need to make more sales. Well, they just skipped through a whole bunch of steps, because the way you make a sale, right, going backwards is, well, you need to do a presentation, you need to do a proposal, you need to have a conversation with someone, you need to engage with someone, you need to have a prospecting system, you need to have a conversation. Like you go back and there's like 5, maybe 7, maybe even 10 steps before you actually make the sale. But most people just focus on making the sale, and they don't know how to do it because they've got nobody to talk to, because they don't have a system and a process how to get in front of people. So all these things get all muddled up, and this is where there's such a lack of clarity, because most people don't understand that reason they're not making sales is not because they're not making sales, is because before you can get into a sale, there is a whole bunch of things you have to do. You have to mind your mindset, and there is a whole bunch of things that you need to do as part of skill set.
And our minds don't like following those steps.
No, because we just want to make the sale. Just give me the money. Right?
I remember I was talking to a friend, and he wanted me to take a look at a letter he wrote to a potential client. And in the letter, he wanted the client to buy his service. And I was thinking, no, I don't think that's the smartest thing to do today, because of what you mentioned about trust and about having a conversation. And also, I'm finding out inherent in the word sales is I have to sell you something.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that people who are very successful, they don't sell. They just have conversations with people.
And they're providing service.
And
right?
they provide service.
That's all they're doing.
That's all they're
right.
doing. And I sometimes I have been told that if I go into a sales meeting with the assumption or the belief that they've already paid me and they gave me a check for my services, what would I do? And I've noticed that it's very difficult to go in that situation and just ask questions.
Yeah.
Where,
and ultimately, that's what we're supposed to do, just ask questions, right?
But when I do my planning meetings with people, Daniel, all I do is just ask questions and gather their thoughts.
Yeah.
But to get to the front of the room, it's like I'm a schizophrenic. I cannot just ask you questions because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, but first you need to diagnose before you can give, just like doctors, right? They have to diagnose before they can give prescription.
But again, you go to a doctor, it's one thing. But when the doctor comes to you and knocks on your door and he has to get your attention, it's difficult to ask questions because he's going to talk about him.
Yeah. Well, because we are, when we're doing a knocking on the door and we're coming to people, we feel like we're bothering them. But if we go there with the mindset of, no, I am providing service, right? I am here actually, I have something that can help them, right? The analogy I like using, and again, that has helped me when I'm talking to potential clients, is if you're driving in a car and the car breaks down and you don't know how to fix it, you just want the mechanic to come over and fix the car. You don't care how they do it, what they do with it. I mean, all you're in your mind, you're hoping he's just going to come there, take a screwdriver, turns it half a turn, and the car runs. Oh, well, look, you know what? He fixed the car. And then we're under the impression maybe that, oh, well, it shouldn't cost a lot, right? But if you were, I've heard somebody telling the story of, I can't remember, somebody was invited to the White House and their car broke down and they were stuck on the side of the road and they could have hitchhiked, they could have that, but they called a tow truck, and the tow truck driver came over there because the person pleaded with him to come over there, that he was invited to the White House, and if he doesn't get there in the next hour, he's going to be late and all of that stuff. Well, the tow truck driver came over and looked at the car going, well, you know what, I can't fix it over here, but what I can do is I can drive you there. And then he sat there and he calculated, saying he had 2 other calls he was going to do. And it says, well, I'm going to miss this call and this call. Well, you know what? It's going to cost you, and let's just say $1,000, right? And the person that was invited to the White House is like going, wow, that is so expensive. And he says, well, I mean, you have a choice, right? You can either go and hitchhike or whatever, push the car out, try to fix it yourself and get yourself all dirty, or we can jump in the car and I can get you there, right? So the whole story was like, what is it worth to somebody to actually get what the results is? And what we get paid really depends on what can we do and go and actually fix the problem, right? There's that famous story of the submarine, right, where the mechanic comes on there and just grabs a hammer and hits it, and suddenly the submarine runs, and submits a bill for, let's just say, $10,000. And the admiral says, can you itemize that? Like $10,000, all he did is just took a hammer and hit it. So it said, hammer hit, $2. Knowing where to hit, $9,998, right? And this is really what it comes down to when we're giving advice to somebody. It's the knowledge that makes the difference. And sometimes what comes easy to us, right? We don't value that as much as somebody else should. And we don't transfer that belief, because in our minds think, well, everybody will know where to go and take the hammer and hit it. Everybody knows how to, use the hammer, using that example. And we discount ourselves. So then when we're talking to people, we don't have clarity on what difference it can make for somebody. Right? So using the example of the submarine, yeah, maybe it costs $10,000 to get the submarine to run, but if the submarine couldn't leave, maybe the cost to Navy would be, I don't know, 100,000, maybe $1 million. Right? So again, you got to do the two sides of the things. It's not what is the initial cost, what is the ultimate cost that would cost, right? Even the gentleman going to the White House, right? Yeah, it cost him $1,000 to get there, but if he didn't make it there, and he was going to the White House because he was going to be presented in front of the president, I don't know the whole story, right? And he had to part with $1,000, where normally that trip maybe would have cost, I don't know, $50 or something like that, right? So it all becomes relevant. But for us in salespeople, we need to get clarity on what is it that we're offering, what are the problems of potential clients, what is it already costing them, right?
So with that perspective of clarity, I'm thinking, I've been told that I'm very talented in what I do when it comes to running meetings. And of the people who have sit in my meetings,
let me ask you this. You've been told, do you believe that?
Well, what I'm asking you, if you didn't interrupt me, that I don't think I have enough clarity around what I really do. Is that a way of looking at it? Is that the proper way of looking at what I'm doing from a clarity standpoint?
Well, 100%. And again, the only way you will know what you do is just like that conversation with your brother that gave you super clarity, is maybe go and read those testimonials from past clients and define what it is that you're doing. Because what you're doing is not what you're doing in action. What you're doing is the ultimate result that your clients get.
Well, two things. One, I have been reluctant to read those testimonials, as you suggested, once a day. And my other friend, Susan, put them on my telephone so as a reminder to listen to them. And I have not done that. I did it once and I couldn't do it again, Daniel. So there's a block that I'm not clear about how to clear it.
So what if that's the only, remember I talked about stacking the dominoes? What if that's the only thing that's stopping you to even figure out what the next domino is, of knocking over that first domino? Because once you get over that, because put it that way, you're trying to figure out all the other ways. What if that is the next small little step that you need to do, is to go and listen to that, is listen to those testimonies in order to go get the clarity on what it is that you do.
Oh, it can't be that easy.
What if it is? And I think that right there, and again, thinking, and I love how you responded to it, that's where our mind starts to hijacking us, because we started thinking about, oh, it just can't be that easy. Then what do? We try to come up with this elaborate thing that is so complex, so overwhelming, that we're already set up ourselves for fail, that will never work. But we rather work on that than doing the simple and easy thing.
And I'm getting very angry.
So, and I told you this before, whenever you get angry, that's exactly what you got to do. There was a quote, I don't know where I saw it. There was a quote that I read today, and it basically said is, that would, like, I'm going to paraphrase here, but that what makes you angry is exactly that what you need to do.
And as I mentioned before, when I take away the word angry and I have the feeling, you know what I'm feeling?
What are you feeling?
What it's like to be alive.
Yeah. Well,
and that's scary. That's scary, because I'm getting a sense of, there's another word, scary, for a feeling. I am afraid of really, really, really feeling alive.
Yeah. Our biggest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our biggest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure.
Yeah, I know. She said that 20 years ago. Does it make any difference? I'm still, at the moment, I'm still reluctant to really, 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 really feeling alive.
Yeah. Well, but do you understand that feelings, all it is just an energy inside of your body? That's it.
And to me, it's a message, it's an energy that I've been bottling it up.
Yeah,
and
but
not allowing it to flow.
So you know what? If there's a power cord, there is energy in it, right? Now, would you say, is it a good energy? Is it bad energy? It's just energy, right?
Just energy, yes.
So think about it. The feelings we have is just feelings.
Energy.
It's just energy. Who gets to decide if it's good energy or bad energy?
Me.
Yeah. So what if the energy that you're feeling, all right, the feeling that you're feeling is just a feeling, it's not negative or positive, and we add a story to it depending on, in that moment, what we think how we're feeling, where the feeling we're feeling is neither positive or negative.
And we bottle it. So guess what? You can't bottle energy, because it's going to
come out.
It's going to come out one way or the other. So clarity would come from exactly what you're saying, is to realize all these feelings are as energy, and allow the energy to flow.
And that's what gave you clarity with your brother, you actually released the bottled up energy inside of you, which was uncertainty, fear, not knowing. And when you ask the question, it's kind of like a bottle top on a bottle. All it did is you just unscrew that, and now it came out because you asked the question.
And you gave me permission to ask it.
Yeah. And it's easier when you have somebody else to give you the permission to ask it, because I just asked you to do it. I mean, you already knew it. You just went and did it, because it's easier when we have somebody that's holding us accountable to things, right?
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's bottle this up for the moment. I'm going to send it out to people and find out how they enjoyed listening to our conversation and whether they would like to hear more.
Sounds good to me.